How did you lose your best friend? Traumatic event leads to mental health crisis. He got jumped pretty bad by 3 guys, and the aftermath was far worse than the attack itself. He spiraled into a deep paranoia, and over time, signs of schizophrenia started to show. I remember visiting him a couple of years ago, just like I had done so many times before. He was the same old friend I knew. At least I thought so. He went out to grab some food while I waited at his place. When he came back, though, something was off. As I opened the door for him, he pushed it open aggressively, baseball bat in hand, eyes wild with fear. Before I could even ask what was going on, he charged at me, knocking me through a glass table. The impact was sudden, and before I knew it, he was over me, swinging the bat. Had his cousin and brother not been there to pull him off, I wouldn't be here today. He accused me of betrayal, of things that never happened, things that only existed in his mind. When he finally snapped back to reality and realized what he had done, he completely fell apart. He was inconsolable. I forgave him immediately, understanding that it wasn't him. It was his illness. But the guilt consumed him. He couldn't face me after that, and he cut me out of his life. I lost my best friend of 18 years that day, not to violence, but to the cruelty of mental illness. Drifting apart from a once close friend? We drifted apart over the years. It wasn't sudden, just a gradual fading of what used to be a strong bond. Life started pulling us in different directions. Our conversations became less frequent, and the things we used to talk about didn't feel as relevant anymore. We both got busy with our own lives, jobs, relationships. At first, I didn't notice it happening, but over time, the silence grew louder. I'd see something that reminded me of them and go to reach out, only to hesitate, unsure if they'd even respond. We didn't have a falling out. We just faded. Looking back, I realized that a lack of communication can slowly erode even the strongest friendships. Have you ever experienced a friendship that suddenly ended, leaving you without closure? I'm still haunted by one that I thought would last forever, but things changed, and now I'm left wondering what went wrong. Do you think it's worth reaching out after years of silence, or is it better to just move on? I'd love to hear your stories and advice. Let's talk about the friendships that shaped us and the ones that got away. Regret over a lost friendship. I used to reach out every now and then, trying to maintain the connection, but the responses grew colder, more distant. Eventually, I stopped trying. I get it. Her life is busy, filled with work and other priorities, but that doesn't make it hurt any less. We were so close once, like inseparable. We could talk for hours about anything, laugh until we cried. But when one person stops putting in the effort, the other can't keep it going alone. So I stopped. I told myself it didn't hurt, that I was fine with it. But the truth? It hurts a lot. I miss what we had, and I never thought it would end this way. It just proves that no matter how strong a friendship is, it takes both people to keep it alive. Turning into someone else after making new friends? He wasn't the same person anymore. Once he started hanging out with this new group, everything changed. They were the kind of guys who cared more about looking cool than actually being good people, and he just followed suit. He became a douchebag, like them. The guy who used to have my back, who used to care about the important stuff, started caring only about his image, about fitting in with these shallow people. It was painful to watch him turn into someone I didn't recognize, someone who didn't value our friendship anymore. I lost him to them, and there was nothing I could do about it. Loss of a friend to cancer. She was only 26. That's way too young for anyone to die, let alone from something as devastating as cancer. We had all these plans, all these dreams of what our lives were going to look like, and then suddenly, she was gone. The disease took her so fast. I still remember the last time I saw her. She was smiling, trying to be brave, but I could see the pain in her eyes. Cancer didn't just take her life. It took away her future and all the moments we were supposed to have together. It's a cruel, cruel thing, and it leaves you feeling so helpless. There's no way to make sense of it. Mysterious end to a long friendship. We were playing Call of Duty, just like we had 100 times before. It was our thing, our way of catching up and spending time together. We talked about how we'd be back on the next day, no big deal. But that was the last time I ever heard from him. No more messages, no more games. I reached out so many times, but he never replied. It's been a year now, and I still have no idea what happened. I heard through the grapevine that he's doing well, which should be a relief, but it just leaves me with more questions. What did I do? I've racked my brain, but I can't figure it out. It's frustrating because I know I'd own up to it if I was in the wrong, but I don't even know what I'm supposed to be sorry for. At first I was just sad. Now I'm angry. Now, friendship fading over time. I had a friend who I thought would be in my life forever. We were close, really close, until our mid-30s. Our kids even knew each other. But then, one day, she just disappeared. Blocked me, blocked our mutual friends. I had no idea what happened. For a while, I was both sad and angry, feeling like I had been abandoned without an explanation. But as time went on, I came to terms with it. People go through their own struggles, and sometimes they just have to cut people off to deal with their own pain. I saw her recently, after years of no contact. We caught up, talked about life. It was good to see her, but it gave me closure more than anything. It's never going to be the same, but at least now I have peace about it. Realizing friendship changed, due to life circumstances. Life has a way of throwing curveballs, and sometimes the way we react to them isn't always rational. We get scared, ashamed, or overwhelmed, and we end up pushing away the people who care about us the most. I think that's what happened with your friend. You said you exchanged numbers again, and maybe that's a sign that the door isn't fully closed. It might take time, and there's no guarantee things will go back to the way they were, but the fact that you've reconnected gives hope. Just try not to hold on to any grudges. It sounds like you're not, but I know how hard it can be. I'm really rooting for you both. Maybe one day, when the time is right, you'll be able to have that conversation and clear the air. In the meantime, just be kind to yourself and to each other. The pain of an abruptly ended friendship. I'm 29, and my best friend from grade 8 just stopped responding to me. No explanation, no falling out, just silence. We had all these plans. She was going to be my maid of honor. We used to talk about how we'd raise our kids together, how our lives would always be intertwined. Then, one day, she was just gone. I reached out a few times, got responses that were cold and short, and eventually I stopped trying. It's been over a year now. It still hurts, but I've come to accept that people change. Sometimes, no matter how close you were, they drift away, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Losing a friend. After they found a romantic partner. Did he find a woman? Sometimes that's all it takes. Guys get into relationships, and suddenly their whole life revolves around their partner. It's like they forget their friends even exist. I've seen it happen so many times. It's hard not to feel resentful, but I guess that's just the way it goes sometimes. Friend cutting ties. After a night of drinking. I know this feeling all too well. My best friend and I had this routine. Friday nights at the bar, every week without fail. Then, one night, he drank too much. I drove him home, thinking nothing of it. But after that, I never saw him again. He didn't tell me he was moving, didn't say goodbye. I heard through mutual friends that he's married now, has a kid, but I wasn't part of that journey. And the worst part? I went through cancer during the pandemic. I thought my friends would be there for me, but they weren't. It's shocking how people you thought would stand by you can just disappear when you need them the most. Friendship falling apart due to drinking. From what you wrote, it sounds like he realized he had a drinking problem and decided to cut ties with anything or anyone that reminded him of that part of his life, including you. Maybe you were his drinking buddy, and he felt like that's all your friendship was based on. It's sad because sometimes people don't realize that the friendship is worth more than just the shared bad habits. Fear of losing a close friend? My best friend and I game together a few times a week, just like you did. Reading your story really hit home for me. I can't even imagine what it would be like if he just stopped talking to me out of nowhere. It's terrifying to think about. I hope you find peace and, hopefully, closure. Encouraging words for a tough time. I'm really sorry to hear what you're going through, but from what I've seen, life has a way of working itself out in the long run. I truly believe that better days are ahead of you, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. Hang in there. Ghosted by a lifelong friend after major life changes. Friend of 30-plus years ghosted me after some big changes in his life. He remarried, and that was fine at first, but then he became more religious, and we started clashing a bit politically. We never had full-blown arguments, just some heated discussions now and then. But one day, after a particularly intense conversation, that was it. He cut me off. No explanation, no fight, nothing. I was the one who was there for him when his dad took his own life. I was at his side, the first person to show up, trying to hold him together in one of the darkest moments of his life. I guess, in the end, that just didn't matter. It's heartbreaking. We were so close for so long, and now we're nothing. Just strangers. Sometimes people just stop being your friend for no reason. Watch the movie The Banshees of Inisherin. It's eerily similar to what you've experienced. Sometimes people don't want to be your friend anymore, and it doesn't always make sense. You think you've done something wrong, or you're left wondering if there was some unspoken issue, but sometimes it's not even about you. It just happens. It's okay to be mad or sad. You're allowed to feel hurt. But in the end, we can't force people to stay in our lives if they've decided to leave. It's one of the hardest lessons to learn. I'm sorry you went through that. It's a tough pill to swallow. Ghosted after a final weekend together. It really hurts deep in your soul when someone close just vanishes from your life. It wasn't gaming for me, but we spent our last weekend together right before the first lockdown. We watched movies, drank beers, reminisced about old times, and made plans to meet up again soon. But after that weekend, nothing. Complete silence. I thought something bad must have happened. Maybe they died. So I even reached out to their mom, which showed how close we'd been. But she didn't know anything either. It's been 4 years since then, and the anger has faded. Now I'm just left with sadness. I never got closure, and that's the worst part. Unanswered questions and no closure? I thought for a while that something terrible had happened. Maybe an accident or worse. So I messaged his sister, hoping for some news. She said he was doing great, which was a relief. But when I asked what I might have done wrong, she completely avoided the question. It felt like she didn't want to get involved, so I stopped asking. I didn't want to push. It's just frustrating because we didn't leave things off with an argument or anything negative. If I did something wrong, I'd own it. I wouldn't be here sharing this if I knew I was at fault. But the truth is, I don't even know what I did. That's what makes this so confusing and painful. Losing a loved one to leukemia. He was my favorite person in the world. We had been through so much together, from childhood to adulthood, and he was always the one I turned to when things got tough. But recently, leukemia complications took him from me. It was such a slow, agonizing battle. Watching someone you love fade away like that is unbearable. He fought as hard as he could, but in the end, the disease won. Now, I'm left with this enormous hole in my life. It's strange how the world keeps turning when you feel like yours has come to a grinding halt. He's gone, and I still can't wrap my head around it. When your best friend was also your ex. My best friend was my ex. We went through everything together. Our breakup didn't tear us apart like people assumed it would. Instead, it made our bond stronger. We knew each other so well that we could talk for hours without ever running out of things to say. We were each other's safety net, even after things ended romantically. It wasn't an easy road, navigating all those feelings, but it worked for us. Losing that connection, though, when life moved on and other relationships came into play, left a gap I haven't been able to fill. No one really understood how deep our friendship went, but it was everything to me. Saying goodbye to a beloved pet. After 18 years, I put my cat down this morning. He was 18 years old, and I'm not even sure how to describe the loss I feel. Mystery had been with me through so many phases of my life, from college days, when he'd curl up on my lap as I studied for finals, to long, lonely nights when his soft purring was the only comfort I had. He was a constant companion, a piece of home, and now he's gone. Saying goodbye was the hardest thing I've had to do in a long time. I hope wherever he is now, he's at peace. Rip Mystery, you were a good damn cat. Coping with the loss of a friend to alcoholism. My best friend of almost 20 years passed away due to alcoholism. It's terrifying how normalized excessive drinking has become. We treat it like it's no big deal, like it's part of our culture to just accept it. But it's deadly. I watched him deteriorate over time, and even though I saw the signs, I never stepped in. I thought he had it under control, like so many people do. Now, I can't help but feel guilt. I miss him every day. I wish I had gotten him help when he was still here. It feels like I failed him, and that thought is going to stay with me for a long time. Watching a friend struggle with alcoholism, I'm so sorry. I'm currently going through something similar with someone close to me. Watching them self-destruct is one of the hardest things I've ever had to witness. You feel powerless, like no matter what you do, it's not enough to pull them out of it. I can only hope they find their way before it's too late. The hypocrisy around substance abuse. I completely agree. It's strange how we stigmatize some substances, but totally glorify others. Like, if someone pulled out a hard drug at a dinner table, everyone would freak out, call for an intervention. But if we all down shots at the same dinner, it's just part of the fun, no big deal. We laugh, get drunk, slur our words, and forget half the night. But it's socially acceptable. We don't bat an eye unless someone actually gets hurt. Even drunk driving. If they make it home without incident, it's seen as no big deal. But alcohol is just as dangerous as any other substance. We need to wake up to that reality. Losing a friend to an unforeseen brain aneurysm. He passed away suddenly from a brain aneurysm. No warning, no signs. He was all alone when it happened. One moment he was here, and the next he was just gone. It's still hard to believe. We had talked not long before it happened, and he seemed fine, like nothing was wrong. I think about him all the time, and part of me even prays for him to haunt me, just to feel his presence again, to know he's still somehow around. It's strange, the things we hope for when we lose someone like that. Wishing for a haunting as a way to hold on. I pray for him to haunt me sometimes. It's funny, isn't it? You never think you'll want something like that, but when they're gone, even the idea of them haunting you becomes a comfort. Just the thought that they might still be there, watching over you, gives a little solace. I'll remember this one, this. Regret over not holding on tight enough. I forgot to hold them tight. Looking back, I realize I took them for granted. I thought they'd always be there, that there would always be time. But there wasn't. It's a hard lesson to learn. You can't hold on to people too tightly, or you might push them away. But at the same time, you can't be too loose, or you risk losing them. Finding that balance is one of the hardest things we do in life. The betrayal of a friend, sleeping with my girlfriend. He was supposed to be my best friend, but he was sleeping with my girlfriend behind my back. That's a betrayal you can't come back from. We shared drinks, shared stories. Hell, I trusted him. And all the while, he was betraying me in the worst way possible. It takes a special kind of fiend to act like nothing's wrong while stabbing you in the back. There's no coming back from that in my book. Cutting ties with a toxic friend. She was my friend for years, and I put up with a lot from her. She was constantly tearing her husband down, picking fights, and I tried to support her where I could. But when I got married, she crossed a line. She helped with the wedding, was all smiles, but then started making fun of my husband, to my face, in front of him. I gave her an ultimatum: stop the disrespect or lose the friendship. She didn't believe me, but it's been 15 years since I cut her out, and I'm better for it. Sometimes, you have to let people go, no matter how long they've been in your life. The heartbreak of losing a friend to suicide? He committed suicide. Sunday will mark a year since the last time I got to talk to him. I can't believe it's been that long already, and yet, it still feels like it happened yesterday. I keep replaying our conversations in my head, wondering if I missed the signs, if there was something I could have said to stop him. Losing someone like that, especially when you don't see it coming, leaves you with a lot of questions and not enough answers. Losing a friend to alcoholism and irresponsibility, alcohol ruined his life. He was once a responsible adult, even had a good job, but he couldn't stay away from the bottle. His marriage fell apart because of his drinking, and things only got worse from there. He got arrested for driving drunk with his daughter in the car, lost his job, and now he lives in his parents' duplex. He still drinks, still drives drunk, and I've even reported him to the police. It's like watching someone self-destruct in slow motion, and no matter what you do, you can't stop it. It's heartbreaking to see someone throw their life away like that, but he made his choices. Tragedy of a friend's death. After a near-fatal fall, my best friend fell out of a 3-story window while on ketamine. He didn't die from the fall, but he broke 7 vertebrae and went through multiple surgeries. He was able to walk again and even DJ'd at my birthday party 2 months later, but he was never the same. About a year after the accident, he got into a fight at a bar, and the bouncer beat him senseless. He ended up in the hospital again, and when he came out, he called me, begging for a ride. I didn't get there in time. A few days later, he died from an overdose. He had been taking medication for pain, and the mix of drugs in his system was too much. I still have a recording of our last conversation, saved on an old phone. It haunts me. Losing a friend. After their marriage, he got married, and that was the end of our friendship. His wife didn't approve of our communication, so he cut me off. It's sad because we were so close, but I guess she felt threatened by our bond. There's nothing I can do about it. Sometimes, people have to choose between the people in their lives, and I wasn't the one he chose. Losing a best friend. After confessing romantic feelings, sometimes feelings change and things get awkward. I confessed to my best friend that I had deeper feelings for them, and everything changed after that. The friendship we had, the ease of talking to each other, all of it disappeared. It's hard to go back once those words are out there, and now it feels like we're strangers. It really sucked losing them that way, but I guess that's the risk you take when you cross that line. Best friend dismisses me when I needed her the most. She and I had been best friends for years, and through all that time, I was her go-to person. Her boyfriend didn't treat her well, and I was always the one listening to her vent, complain, cry, everything. And I never minded it because that's what friends are for, right? But I never really talked about my own problems. Then one day, I was in a really bad place with my depression and anxiety, and I needed to talk. For the first time ever, I needed her to be there for me, like I had always been for her. But when I told her what I was going through, her response was, "You're not the only one with problems." I was devastated. I had been her rock for years, and when I needed her support, she couldn't be bothered. I couldn't believe how quickly she dismissed me. That was it for me. I cut her out of my life and moved on. She never tried to reach out or fix things. 6 years later, I decided to be the bigger person and message her. Surprisingly, she responded, and we talked. It seemed like we had made amends, and she even planned to visit my city over the summer. We agreed to meet up, and I was excited. I thought maybe this was a new beginning for us. But on the day of the meetup, she ghosted me. Just like that, no explanation. I received a random snap from her, but when I asked her why she sent it, I got no response. She had completely ghosted me again. I haven't spoken to her in 8 years now, and I still don't have closure. It's been painful because I think about her almost every day. Sometimes I want to message her and see if things could be different now, especially because I have a beautiful baby daughter I would love for her to meet. But then I remind myself that I can't keep bending over backward for someone who has shown me time and time again that she doesn't value our friendship. I deserve better. Pulling away from friends due to depression. Depression hit me hard, and I started pulling away from everyone. I didn't want to burden anyone with what I was going through, so I isolated myself. I thought that by keeping to myself, I was protecting them from the weight of my problems. But looking back, I realized that maybe I just didn't want to feel like a burden. It's a lonely way to live, though. Reassurance that true friends return after time. It's okay if you pulled away from your friends. True friends understand, and even after time passes, they'll come back. And if they don't, it's okay too. There are people out there who will understand what you went through, people who won't judge you for needing time. You'll find those people, the ones who stick around, even after you've been gone for a while. Don't feel bad. It's all part of the journey. Betrayed in high school over a secret crush. In high school, I made the mistake of trusting my friend with a secret. I told him who I had a crush on. It was a big deal to me, opening up like that. But he turned around and told some girls who were known for their gossip. They didn't like the girl I had a crush on, and they made my life miserable because of it. I was humiliated. That betrayal cut deep, and I learned quickly who I couldn't trust. Losing a friend to a drunk driving accident? She was 22 years old, and a drunk driver hit her car going over 90 miles per hour. I drove by the accident and recognized her car immediately. It was like my heart stopped. I sat there and cried while the fire department worked to pull her out of the wreckage. She was airlifted to the hospital, but I already knew it wasn't going to be okay. One of the firefighters came over to me afterward and apologized. He didn't want me to wait for hours in agony, not knowing what had happened. Even 30 years later, I appreciate his kindness. I was 19 at the time, and I went to her parents' house to tell them what had happened. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I didn't even think about letting someone else deliver the news. I just went. Michelle, I miss you every day, and to every drunk driver out there, fuck you for taking her from us.